The garage won't open.
While I was away on a business trip, my son called and said he left the car I lent him right in front of the garage. Won't open? Is it broken? When I returned home a week later, a foul smell emanated from the now non-operational garage. Occasionally, I heard rattling noises from inside. Could it be a bear? Reports of bear sightings in the neighboring town added to my fear. I cautiously peeked inside and discovered an unexpected situation, leading to a citywide commotion. I'm Lisa Martin, 40 years old. My husband George, 1 year younger, and I live in a secluded mountain neighborhood on the outskirts of town. Our son Lucas moved to an apartment in the city for college. Originally frugal, my husband drastically reduced financial support after Lucas left home. Even my part-time job couldn't cover all our expenses. Can't you contribute more to the household? I asked. His response:
No. Stick to the initial agreement from our early marriage days.
But times have changed, especially with Lucas's tuition looming.
It's your job to figure it out.
My husband snapped. Our strained relationship worsened, and since Lucas left, we hardly speak anymore. Living with my breath-catching husband, my sole enjoyment is watching variety shows. However, he disapproves even of that.
Honestly, watching this trivial stuff every single day.
He grumbles openly. So, I sneakily watch TV when he's not around. One day, while tidying up after dinner, my husband approached and scrutinized my body from head to toe.
You know, once you hit 40, your figure starts falling apart. It's because you're lazy. Lack of self-discipline, that's the problem.
He sighed dramatically, then snorted in amusement. He'd always belittled me with such comments, but lately, it seemed even worse. He continued.
Women are better when they're young, right? Smooth, firm skin. No wrinkles or blemishes. Beautiful.
I retorted. What's that supposed to mean? Are you comparing me to someone? He replied.
Ha! It's a general observation.
I shot back. You're barely a year younger than me. You can't judge others.
Geez, you lack charm in those moments.
He huffed and turned away. In an attempt to prove myself to my difficult husband, I decided to join a local gym. The membership fee wasn't as high as I expected, so I managed to cover it with the money I earned from my part-time job. Surprisingly, the results appeared quickly. I lost 10 pounds in about 2 weeks, and my skin seemed firmer. Excited, I got a short haircut and bought a few clothes that fit my body better, hoping he'd notice. But my husband never complimented me. Instead, while I was out, he discarded most of the new clothes I'd just bought.
Don't wear clothes that emphasize your figure at your age.
He scolded. I retorted. How dare you? What inconvenience have I caused you? He replied.
It's embarrassing for me. And how much are you spending on that gym? Who do you think earns that money?
Despite explaining that I managed the gym fees from my part-time job and bought the clothes with my own money, he remained unyielding.
If you're going to spend on that, I'll reduce your monthly allowance,
he declared. And he did. My gym visits, once a refreshing escape, became unaffordable, and I reluctantly canceled my membership. The gap between me and my husband, who only seemed to crush my spirits, widened even further. One day, as I was tidying up the clothes my husband had carelessly thrown around, a small mobile phone fell out of his pocket. I asked, "Why do you have 2 phones?" He replied curtly,
Oh, that one is for work.
It was news to me that he even had a second phone. He added,
They expect me to work at home too. Our company is relentless.
With a laugh, he tried to change the subject and leave the living room. But just then, the work phone he'd mentioned rang. The ringtone was an old hit song called "A Secret." I vaguely remembered the lyrics. Can't write letters, can't make calls. We meet at the hotel. From there, you return to your family. Why set such a song as the ringtone for a business call? Could it be a dedicated line to someone he can't tell me about? If he were having an affair, it would explain his sudden coldness toward me. Suspicion toward my husband bubbled up within me. A few days later, I found myself away from home for about a week due to a new employee training program at work. Even though it was an experience shared by other part-time employees, my husband couldn't resist making a sarcastic comment.
Going on a business trip even though you're not a full-time employee? Quite the highfalutin status.
Despite his usual snark, he seemed oddly excited. It frustrated me that he disliked spending time with me, but truth be told, I felt the same way. I seized the opportunity. Oh, by the way, Lucas will be returning on that day. He wants to use the car. Is that okay?
I don't have any plans, so it's fine.
With a hummed tune, he left the living room. Afterward, I proceeded with my training as planned and successfully completed the first day. That night, my son called me in a desperate voice.
Mom, I'm here to return the car, but the garage door won't open.
What could be wrong?
For now, I've parked the car in front of the garage. I left the key on top of the shoe cabinet.
Apparently, my husband hadn't answered his calls, so my son reached out to me. Our garage door is automated, designed to open when our car approaches. Could it be malfunctioning? At that moment, I was blissfully unaware of the situation. The 6-day training went smoothly, and I returned home safely. It was past 9 p.m. when I arrived. Looking toward the garage, I saw that the car was indeed parked right up against the door, just as my son had described. Maybe I'll contact a technician tomorrow. Since the car was still within our property, there was no rush. Exhausted from the training, I entered the house. My husband hadn't returned yet, so I fell asleep without further ado. The next morning, I was abruptly awakened by the loud ringing of our home phone. In my groggy state, I picked up the receiver, only to find my husband's company boss on the other end. Apparently, he hadn't shown up for work in the past 6 days, and they were checking if something had happened. Panicking, I promised to investigate immediately. I apologize. I've been away on a business trip for a week. After ending the call, I hurriedly dialed my husband's mobile. But despite multiple attempts, he remained unreachable. Could something have happened to him? Anxious, I paced around, still holding the phone, until I realized I was standing at the garage entrance in my pajamas. And there it was, the familiar ringtone emanating from inside. I approached cautiously and noticed that the garage door was partially open, about 12 inches from the ground. It seems I hadn't noticed the previous night due to the darkness. As I approached with trepidation, an intense foul odor wafted through the gap. Ugh, what's that smell? I covered my nose with my hand and involuntarily stepped back. In my mind, I recalled news about bears appearing in the city. Straining my ears, I heard faint sounds coming from the garage. Could it be my husband, who was working inside, attacked by an intruding bear? Overwhelmed by sudden anxiety, I used a stepladder to peer through the skylight. To my astonishment, what I saw wasn't a bear but something entirely unexpected. Wait. Is this a joke? There, my husband and an unfamiliar woman lay naked on a camping bed. Reflecting on it, my husband had always been a bit unconventional. He'd randomly suggest,
"Let's change the atmosphere tonight."
and set up a tent in the front yard or spread out camping gear in the garage. I had occasionally enjoyed those unconventional nights too. Ah. I see. Perhaps it's a woman's intuition. As soon as I observed the situation in the garage, everything became clear. The naked woman next to my husband must be his second cell phone contact. They've been meeting secretly, and this time, since I was away on a business trip, my husband invited her to our home. Furthermore, taking advantage of the absence of our car, they likely spent an intimate night in the garage. At that moment, to avoid any interruptions, they probably turned off the garage door. When our son came to return the car, the door wouldn't open because of that. Unfortunately, an unseasonal heatwave struck, and unable to bear the heat, my husband and the woman must have tried to escape outside from the garage. However, due to our son's parked car, they found themselves trapped. Sweating profusely and suffering through the heat, they likely discarded their clothes in an attempt to cool down, creating the sounds that reached the outside. Having anticipated the situation, I rechecked the garage through the skylight. Alongside the camping bed, there was a small refrigerator and even a portable toilet for camping. The intense odor I'd noticed earlier now made sense. It must have accumulated over a week. Fortunately, both my husband and the woman seemed conscious and physically capable. They weren't in immediate distress. I climbed down the ladder, took a deep breath, and pondered the most effective course of action. 10 minutes later, with utmost seriousness, I dangled a fishing line through the skylight gap. My target? The discarded clothes from the two. Despite the nauseating smell, I persisted, eventually retrieving their underwear as well. Afterward, I made a call to a certain place and dialed my husband's mobile once again. Startled by the incoming call, he answered promptly, as if saved by divine intervention.
"Hey! Where are you right now?"
"And what exactly are you doing in there?" Taken aback by my voice coming from above, my husband looked up as if expecting a thunderbolt. There I was, peering down at him through the skylight.
"Help me. The stench is unbearable. My throat is parched."
Whether he realized he was caught in the act of infidelity or not, he desperately sought my help. Before that, how about you spill all the details about the woman lying naked next to you?
"That's irrelevant. Just get us out of here."
Not so fast. That second phone is clearly hers. If you don't come clean, both of you could be in serious danger. Finally conceding to my unwavering stance, my husband, now audibly struggling, began recounting the events that led to this predicament. The woman involved is a subordinate from my husband's company, and they've been having an affair for a year. While I was away, they turned the garage into their makeshift hotel. However, the next morning, when they tried to leave, my son's parked car blocked their way, leaving them trapped. Fearing exposure of their inappropriate relationship, they decided to wait silently until a solution emerged. As the heatwave intensified, they shed their clothes to conserve energy. I've recorded everything you just said, so it'll come back to haunt you during the divorce settlement, I warned. My husband weakly replied,
"Our lives are at stake. You can dictate the divorce terms."
But before he could protest further, police sirens blared, and 6 patrol cars lined up in front of our house.
"Hey! Why are the police here?"
Ignoring my husband's question, I peered down from the roof of the garage. The sight of 6 patrol cars lined up in front of the house was truly impressive. And then 4 local hunters, armed with rifles, joined the police, surrounding the garage. The tension escalated, and curious neighbors watched from a distance, some recording the scene on their smartphones. As the car blocking the garage door was moved, several police officers, guided by what seemed to be the incident commander, cautiously began prying open the door. The intense stench permeated the area, causing everyone to grimace. Then, with a collective sigh of relief, my husband and the woman rolled out from the gap in the door. Oblivious to their indecent state, they gasped for fresh air like goldfish. But as their breathing steadied, they finally noticed the rifle barrels pointed at them, and their shock was palpable.
Don't shoot.
One of the onlookers couldn't resist shouting.
Not a bear. It's an affair.
Laughter rippled through the crowd of neighbors who had been watching from a distance. The embarrassed woman blushed crimson and hid behind my husband. Subsequently, an ambulance arrived. Wrapped in blankets, my husband was carried by paramedics toward me.
Why did it have to escalate like this?
I'm sorry. I thought there was a bear in the garage and called the police. With a mischievous smile, I watched him go, his eyes filled with resentment. And so, my husband was whisked away in the ambulance. In the end, my husband's inappropriate relationship within the company was exposed, and both he and the woman were fired. I filed for divorce, seeking $13,000 in compensation from each of them. With their public indiscretions, they lost support from relatives and found themselves in a tight spot. Now, they share a cramped, run-down apartment, living a dreary existence. On the other hand, embracing my newfound single life, I've resumed my gym routine. Shedding weight and feeling more confident. Coworkers even say I look 10 years younger. For now, I'll savor this carefree single life and focus on self-improvement.
How did you find this story? And don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.